Hey guys, Pastor Ben here with another review and reflection. Today I want to talk about this wonderful book, Little Pilgrim's Progress. This is written by Helen Taylor, envisioned and illustrated by Joe Sutphin. This is a book I just finished rereading with our girls. We had read it once before, a few years ago, and then just finished rereading through it the other week. And so I'm excited to give a review of this wonderful, beautiful, beautiful book. So first off, you will immediately recognize Pilgrim's Progress, of course, is the classic allegorical story written by the Puritan tinker John Bunyan in the 17th century. It has been a bestseller ever since it was written, has been tremendously influential in terms of really Christian thought and theology, but especially Protestant and Reformed thought and kind of Christian piety for many hundreds of years. It was something that often alongside the English Bible, King James Bible, Pilgrim's Progress was one of those well-loved books that has stood the test of time, truly, and continues to be a tremendous resource today. If you've read Pilgrim's Progress by Bunyan, you'll know it's a wonderful story, rich allegories, lots of wonderful theology communicated through it, and set in what to us is kind of recognizable, almost a kind of fantasy or adventure story. It's a pilgrimage or a quest story about a little pilgrim, or pilgrim, I should say, or Christian journeying from the city of destruction to the celestial city, and all the characters that he meets along the way, both good characters who are helping him along in his journey, servants of the king, and then of course his enemies, whether it's giants or just people who are trying to pull him off the path, or Vanity Fair, whatever it is. These great scenes and characters that have become really formative in their own rights. They've kind of taken on lives of their own. And so it's a wonderful story. It's adventurous, it's interesting, and it's a great way of kind of communicating a Christian view of the Christian life, a biblical view of the Christian life, and biblical theology. However, it was written in the 1600s, and it's a couple hundred years old. The language is sometimes harder for people to access, although I think it's still readable by the dedicated reader today, but certainly something that would be a struggle for children to maybe grasp and understand as well as grown-ups might. And that's where this book comes into play. So quite a few decades ago, I think the first half of the 20th century, a woman named Helen Taylor decided to make an adaptation of Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress for children. And so she called it Little Pilgrim's Progress, and it's sort of describing the journey of these kids, and it's doing it in language that's digestible. The chapters are very short. It's abridged from the fuller work that Bunyan wrote, and so it's a text that has become kind of a classic in its own right, a classic version, kids' version of Bunyan's famous Pilgrim's Progress. And then this book is kind of a further addition or development of that. So Helen Taylor, writing, I think in the 1940s, did her children's adaptation of the text of Pilgrim's Progress. And then just a few years ago, this book was published in 2021. Just a few years ago, Joe Sutphin had the idea of kind of adapting it to be not just about human children, but about animals. So it's sort of an anthropomorphic tale with these different animal creatures, and then beautifully, beautifully illustrating it as well. And that is the edition that I have here. This is put out by Moody Publishers, like I said, published in 2021. And so it has the full text of Helen Taylor's adaptation of the children's version of Pilgrim's Progress, Little Pilgrim's Progress, as well as these beautiful illustrations. So you just get kind of a sampling here. I grew up reading the Redwall books, if any of you are familiar with those. So this ticks every box for me. It brings back those Redwall memories and puts Pilgrim's Progress very much in that kind of world. So it opens with a number of these illustrations. Here we get the first chapter, and so each chapter is usually a page, probably two, 3 pages long at max. So very short, very digestible. Almost every chapter has at least 1 or 2 illustrations. A few don't, but generally speaking, you've got regular illustrations. They're really well imagined, really well portrayed. I could just kind of keep flipping through and you would see so many wonderful examples of Joe Sutphin's great illustrative style. And so this book contains really 2 books, actually. So it contains Little Pilgrim's Progress, the story of Pilgrim's journey to the celestial city, and it also contains the story of Christiana. So I think it's about half and half. in terms of the book here. So all told, this is, let me see, 300 and something pages. Get to the, yeah, so it's right around 300 pages. And so the first half of it is the story of Christian's journey to the Celestial City. The second story is the story of Christiana's journey to the Celestial City. So a friend of Christian, she and her siblings who journey onto the Celestial City, and kind of, you know, more people join their party along the way. So it has a kind of different story. I think I honestly like the first story best. I think there's fewer stable characters, so you can keep track of who's there, and the characters that you're meeting along the way have more life to them. The second story, there's so many people that are kind of part of the party, as it were, that you can lose track of who's who, and, you know, all those types of things. Although the second story, Christiana's story, has Greatheart, who is their guide that the king sends to help these children on their way, and he's one of my favorite characters in the book. And so yeah, it's a wonderful version of a classic retelling of a classic book. And this is something that we have, like I said, read with our girls twice now. We often will do, you know, just read a chapter or two at night before we put the girls to bed. Again, it's 2 or 3 pages, so just a short thing, and it helps to communicate biblical theology and ideas, biblical view of the Christian life, and to give us vocabulary that we can use with our kids. We can say, hey, do you remember when Christian had to fight against self? Well, that's who you're being called to fight against right now. You're being tempted to be selfish, you know, and so we can kind of walk through that and talk about the gospel and how it applies to them in their daily lives in ways that they get and understand. And I think if you're going to have that text, this is a wonderful illustration of it. I've given this away as a baptism gift for when we've had families bringing their children for baptism, something that we've wanted to just share with others. And so I would highly recommend, if you've got kids or grandkids, maybe pick up a copy of The Little Pilgrim's Progress by Helen Taylor, and then again envisioned and illustrated by Joe Sutphin.